Yes.
And with hindsight, we have to be on that planet.
Right. I mean, our existence tells us nothing about how probable it is for life to arise, given the right conditions. Even the fact, apparently we know now that life arose rather early in the history of the Earth.
That helps a bit. That's an additional fact.
But even that doesn't help very much, because suppose life had arisen on Earth, not when it did, but 100 million years later, still very early, as the Earth goes. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, but still very early. Well, that means evolution would now be 100 million years behind schedule, and we would not be here talking about it.
Yeah.
And so the condition, well, I don't know, does it take 2 billion years for intelligent life to arise once life starts? Perhaps it does.
Possibly. I mean, maybe it takes that long to get a eukaryotic cell. However, I don't think there is a schedule once you get out to, I mean, it's not clear why the dinosaurs didn't produce intelligent life. They might well have done, in which case it would have happened at least 65 million years earlier. So I don't think you can say that it took, as you say, 2 billion years from the origin of the eukaryotic cell in order to get intelligent life. I think it could have happened much earlier than that, or indeed much later.
But
so I think that's an accident.
I can't believe that something like that worm that all the biologists study, C. elegans,
yes,
which has about 100 neurons in its nervous system, I don't think that could ever...
Oh, no.
I mean, that's a multi-celled organism with a nervous system, but it still is not going to learn quantum mechanics.
There's no timetable in the sense that 65 million years after the dinosaurs went extinct, only then had evolution kind of breasted the tape of it. It could have happened 10 million years earlier or 10 million years later, or
well,
never.
It may be that we're on the tail of the Gaussian. That is, it's very improbable that life arose as early as it did after the formation of eukaryotic cells. And if that's true, then there's a strong selection that it's only life that arises very early in the history of the universe that has a chance of becoming intelligent.
That has time before
and if that's true, and we don't know that it is, but if that's true, then the fact that life arose very early on Earth does not argue that life arises readily whenever the conditions are right. It might be that it's still an incredibly unlikely thing, and it's only on the doubly rare cases where it arises very early that it then becomes intelligent.
Yes. And of course we don't know how rare life is. It could be very common. I think we pretty much know that intelligent life is rare, because otherwise we'd have been visited by radio transmission.
The Fermi argument, where are they?
Where are they? And so I think you have to say that maybe there's a cascade of improbabilities. There's the origin of life, perhaps the origin of the eukaryotic cell or something like it, and the origin of intelligence and technology.
But even
we've got through all those hurdles.
Even that, you know, we've sampled, in terms of how long it takes to reach us, we've sampled only a few tens of thousands of light years, even assuming people can travel at the speed of light.
Yes.
Or that they send us signals. So we've perhaps sampled a volume of our galaxy.
It's a pretty small sphere, isn't it?
10,000 light years, but it's only one galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies.
Yeah.
So it may be that life maybe occurs a few times in each galaxy.
I would have thought, yes. I mean, yeah.
And then it's still quite frequent. Well, wouldn't it be exciting if signs of a completely independent life were found even on Earth? I mean, it might be that one could find organisms that had a different genetic code.
Well, Paul Davies is actively looking for this. I mean,
or that we could find life on Mars that was clearly not some kind of contamination. I think that...
It would only take a different genetic code. I mean, because as far as we know, the DNA code is universal, the minor details. Yeah. But a different genetic code, either not based on DNA or even based on DNA with completely different lookup table.
Yeah. There's nothing very attractive or elegant or efficient about the genetic code we have.
No, I mean, Francis Crick devised a much better one.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yes, yeah.
What a pity.
Yes, what a pity. That's right.
You know, I'm quite an opponent of manned spaceflight, not because I think it's bad in itself, but just it's incredibly expensive, and it's sold as a way of doing science, and I don't think it is a good way of doing science. No. I think spaceflight, unmanned missions are very important. I'd like to see lots of unmanned missions to Mars, scooping up soil and examining it. But I must say, if they discovered something on Mars that required human inspection to decide whether it really was a sign of life, that would change my mind about.
Wouldn't it be staggering? Wouldn't it be amazing?
Yeah. But I don't see that happening, and I don't see why we would want to send a very limited number of humans to Mars, examining just very small regions of the surface, rather than hundreds of robots.
Yeah, that's
pure.
All over the surface. Public relations, isn't it?
There's some kind of mystique about putting people into space. I've argued about it, and most astronomers, I think, would agree with me.
Yes.
Most aeronautical engineers, or whatever they are, disagree. They love the idea of.
It's a challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And of course, politicians love it.
What about talking about big science? I mean, presumably you're excitedly looking forward to what CERN starts to produce.
With a certain amount of terror that, they may discover great things like the particles that make up dark matter, or they might discover signs of supersymmetry. They probably will discover the so-called Higgs boson, which, in the theory of Salam and myself, is responsible for the breakdown of the symmetry between the weak and the electromagnetic forces. But it may be that they'll only discover the Higgs boson and nothing else, and we'll be left looking at our toes and wondering, what are we going to do next? There may be nothing exciting, really new, that can be reached with the Large Hadron.
But it was worth doing, nevertheless.
Oh, well, we have to find out. And, of course, there's a good chance that they're going to discover something very exciting. But I have fears that in a way, it's less frightening if they don't discover the Higgs boson, because that would be a contradiction of our good theories, and then we would all go back to the drawing boards, and we have various alternative theories that might explain that. And it would be exciting for a while. But if all they discover is a Higgs boson with roughly the properties that the theory predicts, and nothing else, I
see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying.
Nevertheless, wouldn't you say to a young person, now would be a very exciting time to go into physics because of this? I mean, in Britain, they're moving away from physical science in droves.
It's not only cut its support for this, it's cut its support for a number of telescopes and other things. It's cut its support for the next linear collider.
Yes.
No, it's kept its support, I think, for CERN. I think that Britain has maintained its support for CERN, which is the laboratory where the Large Hadron Collider will be placed. Well, I would say that anyone who goes into physics right now would be a little bit too late to participate in the work at the LHC. And whether or not it would be a good career move depends on what they're going to discover.
I think I'm thinking of theoretical physics, that depending upon what they discover, mightn't there be a sort of opening of dam walls?
If they discover something exciting, then by all means. But if all they discover is the Higgs boson, and it has the properties we expect, then no, I would say that the theorists are going to be very glum.
Right. A moment ago you mentioned Abdus Salam.
Yeah.
Can I ask, was he one of those who was a genuinely religious? I mean, I've heard it said he was a devout Muslim, and I've always wondered about that.
Well, when I first met him, I visited Imperial College in the academic year 61-62. He had a bottle of scotch in his desk drawer.
Yes.
So he wasn't
an observant Muslim.
He wasn't completely observant.
No.
He was religious,